a knife, a rolling pin, a bowl, and a cookie sheet. And you'll have to grease the cookie sheet. Apples, we'll be using a couple different types of apples. Flour, sugar, little maple syrup, any kind of nuts. Today we're using pecans, and a puff pastry.
Do you have something that you make that you don't have a recipe? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to show you. It's a dessert for which I had some leftover apples and I had a piece of puff pastry that was thawed. So I put them together. But today we're going to be using, since this is the beginning of apple season, we're going to be using some ginger gold, which are very crisp and they have a nice sweet flavor. And this is a Tiedemann, and this is local to our area, and I'm just going to taste it. It's kind of like a Macintosh, but it's tart, more like tart like a Granny Smith without the crisp. I think it's going to go really well with this. I really like making apple things where you use a bunch of different apples and they just kind of talk to each other and create a great conversation. Now, of course, the first thing I did before anything was turn on the oven. I turned on the oven to 420 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of you on Celsius, figure it out. For cutting my apples, these are going to be nice and simple. And since I'm not going to see them, you know, I don't really want to make phenomenal slices. So I'm just going to cut out the interior here. And then I'm going to slice it in half this way. Okay? And then I can just easily make it into thinner slices. The thinner slices are going to help this cook faster, which is what I want. Puff pastry does not take long to cook, and so you don't want the interiors taking, you know, an hour and a half to cook, and then you've got an exterior which is all way too crispy. And since I'm making this up as I'm going along, I'm just going to put in kind of what I think I do. I know that I put in this 1/4 cup of nuts all the time. And then this is 2 tablespoons of sugar. And there's a reason why I'm going to be using a dry sweetener, because of viscosity. It's how much water and stuff is in there. And these apples are going to give off a lot of water. Especially I can tell those Tiedemanns, it's T-Y-D-E-M-A-N. Those are going to give off a lot of water. So I want something that's going to sop it up, plus I need to sweeten it. I also have put in a 1/4 cup of flour to do exactly the same thing. So, and a little bit of salt. Amazingly enough, not a lot, but a very little bit of salt, and that's a 1/2 teaspoon for about 5½ cups of stuff that we have here, is going to make it taste a little sweeter. Any more than that and it'll start tasting salty. What I have done is I've made sure that all of the pieces of apple are well coated. And this is a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, and I'm just going to add a little bit. Okay, I'm going to say 1/8 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon, and which is going to be approximately 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. And now I'm going to roll out my puff pastry, and I'll show you how to do that. To tell you the truth, I never even looked up a recipe to how to roll out puff pastry. I just thought, kind of looks like pie dough to me. So I just grabbed my puff pastry and I started rolling it out. Now what I do is I take flour, I cover a big area with some flour, just some regular all-purpose flour, and then I put it on my rolling pin, and then I start rolling it out. Okay? And there are a couple of different types of puff pastry shapes. So you get one that works for you. I like this one. Make sure that you turn it over. You're going to roll it out, but you want to make sure that it doesn't get too sticky on any one side. And in different directions. You want to roll it on diagonals. You really want this thing to be nice and thin. It's pretty thin. Now I'm going to put my stuff in it. Since I cut my apples up and I used this all right away, I didn't have to put any lemon juice on it. If you're cutting up apples and you're like don't know how to do the puff pastry thing, and put a little lemon juice on it, mix it around on your apples when they're done, and then put them in the fridge. And they will stay nice and bright. The lemon will keep them fresh while you're figuring out how to do your puff pastry. Make sure this is totally together before you do your puff pastry, okay? And now I just flop it over. I know it's not pretty, but that's okay. When I do this for Thanksgiving or Christmas, I actually will take 2 pieces of puff pastry and I take one and I use cookie cutters and I put little shapes on it. Like I have a turkey cookie cutter, and so I'll put those around and make it really pretty. But here's my cookie sheet that I already greased. It's already ready to rock, and I'm just going to put my thing on it. There we go. And now I'm just going to kind of cover up these holes. Use a little bit of pastry over here because I have my fingers kind of go in there. And you can kind of glue it in, like I'm gluing it in. You can also take a little bit of water and run it along the side, and it'll kind of glue it even better. Okay. And then I want to sort of seal it up. Okay, so now it's ready, and it's going to go in the oven for 20 minutes. It's done. So now let's just take a look. Looks really great. I'm going to let it cool for just a couple minutes before I eat it. Smells fantastic. You could just make a dessert pretty fast and easy with puff pastry. And as long as you're not adding a lot of gobbledygook in it, it's going to taste great, and it's not going to be that much fat, especially for a dessert. So I'm going to let this steam for a minute because it would burn my mouth, and then I'm going to try it. It smells so good. Okay, now I would eat this with a fork, but since we're talking about lunches and stuff, your kid's not going to eat this with a fork. They're going to pick it up with their fingers. So, here we go. Oh, that's good. This is so good. And this feeds 8. What do you see? It's not that many calories. Oh my god. I'm happy. I'm happy.